everyone. Thanks for joining me again today. I'm Angela Kaufman, and I'm joined by my boys Spango, who's taking a nap, and his brother Muggsy, who's just a cuddle bug. So today we're going to talk about genre, particularly with fiction, though I'll mention nonfiction a little bit here. And genre is important when it comes to writing, especially if you want any other person other than yourself and maybe your immediate family to read your book. Genre is a necessary evil. And I call it an evil because it's an idea that I am very resistant to. I got to be honest. I don't love the idea of categorizing books. I don't love the idea of like certain publishers only doing certain books, certain agents, blah blah blah. Like I super resist anything formulaic. I don't like it. I like books that surprise me. I like authors to take risks. I like it when things don't go according to the rules. But I will call it a necessary evil for a reason. If you go to the store, and it doesn't have to be a bookstore, let's say you go to the grocery store and you're looking for a particular item, and let's say none of the aisles were labeled. I mean, that would be such a nightmare to have to go aisle by aisle to find out where the specific cookies or dog treats or beverage or whatever it is you're looking for. It would be a nightmare to try to find things. Now, it's bad enough anyway because they don't always like make sense in terms of where they put things. Um, I've noticed like one of my grocery stores that I go to, I love stuffed grape leaves, and there's like different grocery stores will put them in different places. So like in one place, it's in the multicultural or whatever they call that food aisle that's like, international or whatever they call it. In other places, it's near the produce. Like in other places, it's somewhere else. Um, but think of to make this bitter pill easier to swallow. Think of the idea of book genres like the labeling of the aisles in the grocery store. Yes, it's annoying that we have to separate and label and categorize things, but if you don't do it, how is a reader going to know that your book is the type of book that they would be interested in? So, and you can still overlap things. You can still like be fluid about it and mold some different things together. But there are risks to doing that. And so, to the best way I think to help people understand genre is to make a recommendation that you read a book that is a really great example of a book that blends a couple different genres together, does it very very well, um, and still ran into a little bit of problems because the categories weren't clear. And luckily, this author is working with a huge publishing house. It's Atria Publishing. They're huge. It was a big success. And so the genre, I keep wanting to say gender and genre at the same time. The genre uh, interspersing didn't really hurt the book, but it could have. So I highly recommend it. It was a book that I loved. I waited for this to come out. I heard about it through an interview that happened online earlier in the summer. And I was so excited based on the description. And I will say this, the description is accurate, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. To me, that made the book a lot more fun. So I'm not going to put any spoilers out there. I'm not going to ruin it. I'll be very minimal in my description of this book because I want every surprising twist and turn to be a surprise. It's by Zakaya Delilah Harris, and it's called The Other Black Girl. The premise of the book is this. The protagonist is a young woman named Nell. She's a black woman working as an editor in a huge, like, top biggest publishing company in New York City, and it's a made up company, but you can imagine it being Simon and Schuster or Atria or like wherever. It would be like one of like the big five. And it starts off sort of showing this young woman's experience, first of all being sort of new in her field, and her struggle with like how much do I conform to like this largely white industry, and this industry that has been ruled by white men since forever. And even though that's changing, it's changing a teeny tiny bit at a time, and not nearly as much as it needs to. So the premise of the book is that it's her sort of discomfort being the only black woman working in this office, or even the only black person in the office, and like the only other black people, or I don't remember if it's black people or people of color that work in like the basement in the mailroom. Like that's the only other people who are not white, if I remember correctly. So I mean, it's a big thing in her career and her perception of herself and how her colleagues treat her, and it's just really well written. Like I was on the edge of my seat. Like the story's very compelling because right away there's high stakes. I mean, this could have been just a social satire, and right away there's high stakes. There's this like intense situation. There's all of these insecurities and like this protagonist second guessing herself, and if she tells the truth, it's going to cause problems, and if she doesn't tell the truth, she's doing a disservice, and that's not why she's in this industry. And so, like, there's all of this internal conflict and external conflict, like, right from the get go, and I love it. What's interesting is the book also begins with a quote about the horror genre and the experience of Black people. And it's easy to forget. It's a great quote. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not going to read it. But it's a great quote, and it's easy to forget right away because right away the book takes off um, feeling like a social satire. And it's actually more than that. And again, I don't want to, it might be classified this way. When you go to check it out or buy it or get it from the library, take note of the genre. It may be classified as social satire and horror, but it's easy to forget that because right away we get really engrossed in this story and it builds up really well and the characters are really interesting. And then when you think you've got the turning point, it's like a roller coaster that like just when you thought you've had the last big drop, there's more. And again, I love it. I love the way the author blended these different genres and took risks and did really adventurous things with this book, and wrote it very well for doing, like, it's not an easy thing to do. So I give her a ton of credit. I'm glad that it's been successful, and I'm glad that Hulu is going to make a mini series based on it. I'm really excited about that. But what I would also encourage you to do is, as you're reading it, notice how it sits with you as you go through the different twists and turns. Now, if you are like me and every twist and turn really excites you, that's great. But if you are like some of the people who reviewed this book who were not so happy with it, because those twists and turns leave you feeling confused, or leave you feeling disappointed because you thought you were going into one genre and you're going into a different one, take note of that, because that's the experience that some readers will have when they read your book if your book is not very clearly aligned with a specific genre. And I know that from personal experience. Before writing novels, my first solo book that was picked up by a publisher, and it was picked up by a pretty big publisher for that industry, Konari, which is part of Red Wheel Weiser, which is the second largest publisher of New Age nonfiction books. So they do like tarot, Wicca, metaphysical, psychic, all that, occult genre. And even within that, there's subgenres. And this is how specific it gets. So within the umbrella of metaphysical, occult, witchcraft, tarot, new age, there's also like the mini genres. And one of the reasons that my book, Queen Up, Reclaim Your Crown When Life Knocks You Down, Unleash the Power of Your Hidden Tarot Queen, crazy long title. We'll talk about titles in another video. Really long title. Part of the reason it was published by the imprint Konari was because Konari handled more of the self-help division of their, metaphysical new age healing umbrella. And that made sense because Queen Up is a self-help workbook journal based on the four archetypes of the archetypes of the four tarot queens. So in the discussion about where to place it in terms of more specific categories, which is important because bookstores have to know that. They have to know what they're ordering, where to put it on a shelf. In terms of trying to figure that out, there was a lot of discussion because I didn't make it easy on them. Again, this is like self-help plus tarot. That's becoming more of a thing. but it's still early. It's still early enough to be confusing. So the thing is, once you put the word tarot in there, the self-help book becomes a metaphysical occult tarot book. And we were trying to break that rule. We were trying to challenge that by saying, no, this is a self-help book that just happens to have, a tarot reference as the vehicle. And I was fine with that because that's what I wanted it to be. And we kind of, the publisher and I saw eye to eye on that. Unfortunately, what ended up happening, and I learned this as I was promoting it, especially the first, several months promoting it, trying to bridge that gap from the self-help side of things was really tricky. Now, I have an LCSW. I've been a therapist for many years. So it's not that the qualifications weren't there to have the authorial voice for it. It's because people got really hung up on the word tarot. And once that word is out there, the expectation, again, genre is all about what your reader expects. So when they see the word tarot in the title, a reader is expecting that a book with the word tarot is going to teach them how to read tarot cards, or is somehow going to be specifically about tarot cards. And that wasn't really the intention with this. It was part of it. Again, this was kind of a blend of a couple different things. So it made it difficult to market it. It made it difficult to reach that goalpost of wanting to speak to the healing, holistic, self-help, therapeutic. It made it difficult to get a foot in that door. And when I tried to get a foot in that door, it was challenging and it required a lot of explanation, and it was a tough sell. However, when I placed it closer to like the tarot, occult, witchcraft, that kind of thing, like more in that genre, it was much more easily understood. It still required some explanation. It wasn't like an instant, like easily understood. But it was much more easily understood. And so most of the second year the book was out, I promoted it specifically in pagan, tarot, metaphysical, occult focused formats. Now, if that had been the plan from the beginning, perhaps it would have been better placed with one of the other imprints that directly went to that target market. But again, that was not my intention, and the publisher and I were seeing eye to eye on that. In fact, if they had tried to talk me into that, I would have been resistant to that idea, because that's not what I wanted Queen Up to accomplish. I wanted Queen Up to be read by people who wouldn't normally be reading about tarot, who could then embrace some of the concepts that people who understand tarot, even on a basic level, would already be interested in. And okay, that was a really important lesson. Again, the importance of genre, and just understand whether you're traditionally publishing or self-publishing, if you do flexible, risky things with genre, it could make or break how successful your book is. Now, it may be worth it to you to do it anyway, because the truth is you're never going to know until you do it. And I'm really glad that Zakaya Delilah Harris is having great success with her book. I think it's a brilliant book. I can't recommend it enough. I love it. I'm so glad that the marketing plan that she had, the publisher that she's working with, and the style that she wrote it in. Because again, it's kind of comparing apples and oranges, because we're comparing a novel, which is fiction, to nonfiction. So again, there's similar rules that people follow, but it's not always exactly the same. I'm glad that her book is taking off and that it's doing well, and that the risks that she took, it seems like they're paying off more so than not, because even the detractors who were like, oh, I didn't get it, all of a sudden it turned into this, are far fewer than in number than the people who are praising her book. So again, if you're going to stick with a genre, that's great. There's certain things you'll need to keep in mind, and we'll do a video on that in the future. If you want to get creative with genre, which people do, and just like it's working for Zakaya Delilah Harris, it does work for other folks as well. Take, for instance, Diana Gabaldon, who wrote the Outlander series. Now, is that historical fiction? Is that romance? Is it, that as well has some metaphysical elements to it. I mentioned in another video, I do not read romance novels. I have no interest in them. But I read every single one of the early mains, there's some newer ones that I haven't read, but every single one of the main, like Claire and Jamie Outlander series, I loved them. Now, how did I happen to find out about them? I wasn't in the bookstore looking under the romance section. They might have been classified as historical fiction. I wasn't looking for that either. I happened to stumble upon them when friends who share an interest in witchcraft and paganism recommended it. So it was that part of it that caught my interest, and the rest I just happened to really like and enjoy. I went through a historical fiction phase where I really enjoyed that genre. So the key is you want to be able to make sure people find out about your book. And how are they going to find out about it? Well, they're either going to look it up online, and again, it needs to have a category so that people who love historical fiction or sci-fi or horror or space opera, they need to know where to look. They need that category to point them towards your book. If you go into a couple different genres, like for example Quiet Man, okay, that's it's crime, it's political fiction, and so you're allowed to have several different categories. Be aware that even then, people will sometimes get confused and get disappointed. So I had one reviewer um, left a review for Quiet Man, and their review was it was a good book, but the politics ruined it. Now, again, I wasn't hiding that from people. It's listed as a political fiction. But, people don't always read the full description of it. So just be aware, even when they do read the description, people tend to be kind of set in their ways about what category they want. So if you do want to take risks, it's probably not a good idea to go way off on a limb. Don't go way out on a limb trying to make it too surprisey, because that can backfire. If you do put some surprises in there, it has to kind of make sense with the genre you're placing it in. And even if you have a couple of genres that don't usually go together, that's okay. Experiment, but know that the more you experiment, the more potential it has to backfire. But it may be worth it. There may come a day when people are much more open to blending genres together, and something that didn't really go so well, in the year 2021 or 2022, by 2030 might be like a huge hit. So definitely check out The Other Black Girl, the book by Zakiya Delilah Harris. And again, pay attention to how it sits with you as it starts to shift and evolve as a story. And not only that, but as you're reading other books that you love, pay attention to the things that you like about the certain genres, the certain types of books that you read. And notice how you feel when an author maybe doesn't always fulfill those things exactly, or when an author goes off script in introducing another genre into it. So if you have questions or comments, feel free to reach out. I can be reached at AngelaKaufmanAuthor@gmail.com. Thanks for watching and have a great day.